back into Always the Jags, where we talk all things Jaguars, all things Duval, all things NFL to get you ready for the next week. Today we are discussing the tough loss we had to the Chiefs. Score was 17-9. Jaguars fell in our home opener. And there's a lot to unpack about this one. There's really a lot to unpack. Got a lot of things to talk about, and then we're going to look forward to week 3 versus the Texans, which hopefully will be a get-right game for us. But first, let's talk about this Chiefs team. Let's talk about what the Chiefs did to us, because I think in the opener, we all noticed there was an issue with the offensive line. And granted, again, DeForest Buckner is an all-pro. He's an incredible football player. So is Grover Stewart. However, and Chris Jones is absolutely phenomenal. But we were not expecting that level of dominance from the opposing defensive line. Like, as soon as I knew Chris Jones was coming back in the game, I was like, oh man, there's going to be a problem here. We're going to need to plan for him. The thing is, we didn't. We did not plan for him at all. Chris Jones was able to do whatever he wanted all over the field, and it didn't matter what was going on. The Jaguars had no answer for him. And again, asking a rookie to block an all-pro is a lot, but I noticed Press Taylor was sending Brenton Strange over there to help him. And so you're asking 2 rookies to block an all-pro. Again, not really going to happen. But the issue was, I don't think it mattered who you sent over there to help him, because the only person who was winning on Sunday on a consistent basis was Walker Little. Chris Jones was absolutely beating up Ben Bartch. He beat up Luke Fortner. He beat up Brandon Scherff. Everybody else on the offensive line, 4/5 of our offensive line, have a huge problem. Because as good as a guy like Chris Jones is, it shouldn't be every single rep you're losing. And Trevor Lawrence had pressure in his face all day. So I know Doug didn't want to talk about it, or I won't even say admit it, but he didn't put the blame on the offensive line. Really appreciate that about him and Trevor. They're not guys to point fingers. And the loss on this past Sunday was not all on the offensive line. However, if they don't get better, if they don't figure this out, we are going to have a long season, and we may not do as well as we thought we were going to. And it's incredible, because I predicted that we were going to lose this game. So it's not exactly that big of a surprise that we did. However, the manner in which we lost is what's the most surprising. Because if you look at the stats of the game, we won the turnover battle 3-1. Our defense forced 3 turnovers, and our offense only had 1 turnover. The Chiefs racked up 95 yards worth of penalties. 95 yards in penalties. We only had like 10 or 15. Okay, that's a game you win. The refs gave you a football field's worth of penalties, and you win the turnover battle. There were so many drives we had in the red zone that we could not put on the board into the touchdown. And there are so many drives that we had that just couldn't get going. And I think that's because our offensive line right now, it has a big issue. A lot of people thought Ben Bartch he was playing really well before he got injured. I was thinking he would pick up right where he left off. It seems like he's regressed heavily. Either he's not fully recovered from his injury, or maybe he wasn't that good in the first place. I don't know, but there's definitely an issue with him playing guard. And the solution might be to put in Tyler Shatley, even though, like I said, it was Ben Bartch's job. Maybe put in Shatley for right now, because Bartch is he's getting beat on a consistent basis by guys that are not Chris Jones and DeForest Buckner. Same kind of thing for Brandon Scherff. I don't know if he's still hurt, but he's the guard making almost $20 million. So you'd think that at least him and Chris Jones should be an even match. It was not. Chris Jones was winning that. Brandon Scherff if you look at Chris Jones' grade, it was like 92. It's like he was playing in college against our offensive line. And again, don't want to harp too much on the offensive line, because Trevor missed some really good throws. Our receivers are usually good at tapping their toes, and they weren't able to get it done. But the entire offense felt disjointed and off, and that's because there wasn't enough time in the pocket. And so, when you've got a guy in your face all the time, like I said, there were a lot of those that Trevor could have and should have made, a lot of better decisions that I think he should have made, especially on that 1-yard run to the touchdown, where he was going to just hand it off to ETN, who had a clear path in, but Trevor made the decision to keep it himself and go for it, and that's understandable, but then he got lost. He got dropped for some yardage, and the Jaguars weren't able to come away with the touchdown there. And so we had to end up settling for a field goal. And like, that's the kind of, one touchdown changes the whole momentum of the game. And then there also was the decision to go on 4th and 5. I mean, it's like those two calls. They decided to go for it on 4th and 5 when they could have punted and pinned Mahomes way back in his territory. And those two decisions, I believe, changed the entire outcome of the game and what could have been a win for the home. Because if you think about it, the Chiefs hadn't been driving down the field and scoring at all. And then we gave them the ball at like their own 40 or 45 when we turned it over. And then they were able to get it going and turn it into a touchdown. That gave them momentum, If they didn't have all of that, they maybe don't score that touchdown. Maybe it's 10-9. And if we just hand it off to ETN, that would have been a 4 more points right there. Now we're looking at a 14-10 win. So again, it's really hard to say like who the blame is on. The one thing, what I was surprised was when I thought about how we might lose this game. Again, I wasn't expecting us to win. I was not expecting us to win just because the Chiefs were just a better team at the time. But I was expecting it to be on the fault of the defense not being able to stop Patrick Mahomes. But they stopped Patrick Mahomes really well, actually. Like, again, our defense had been playing well the entire game. From that Andre Cisco pick, we were getting consistent pressure, and the Chiefs have a good offensive line. Really good offensive line. Now, again, edge, they're not as strong as their interior, and most of our pressure was coming off the edge, but we were using that. And we were winning these matchups. Guys were tackling, rallying to the ball. It was a really good defensive performance. There were a couple of plays where the defense could have made and they didn't, but like overall, they did their job. Because again, if the Jaguars didn't gift Mahomes field position at the 45, they really only held him to 10 points, which is a lot. And then once they gift wrapped him that field position, of course, the Chiefs scored, so really the defense gave up 17 points. But any defense that holds Patrick Mahomes over 17 points should be happy. That is a victory right there for your defense. And in general, like the Jaguars offense is built to put up 25 plus. That was the plan. 25 points and up. I mean, closer to 30. That's what we did. I mean, last week, and I don't think I wasn't expecting the Colts defense is not as good as the Chiefs. And Steve Spagnuolo is a really good defensive coordinator, and he knows how to bring things that confuse people. But I think Steve Spagnuolo saw how bad our offensive line played against the Colts and decided to use that to his advantage. And there's a lot of bad offensive line play around the entire league. People are getting pressure. I've never seen this many sacks, this many anything at all throughout the first half of a season. So hopefully that's something that will get better. But, I remember earlier in my podcast, I was talking about potentially trading Cam Robinson. Yeah, that's not going to happen. We need to keep Cam Robinson. Like, now, because right now it looks like 4/5 of our offensive line is not working. Whether we think they're starters or whatever, 4/5 of it is not working. 4/5 routinely got beat. They lost more than they won on Sunday. So that's going to take an overhaul. And I'm sure Phil Rauscher will help get it together, but we might need to move guys into different spots. I think Walker Little, like, again, he's definitely our best offensive lineman right now. And, I could see shifting him into guard, but making sure he knows, like, you are the left tackle, but we need someone to play left guard right now. And you're going to be the guy when Cam Robinson gets back, because we know Cam Robinson can hold up at left tackle as long as he's been staying in shape and everything. So that might fix, like the left side, help shore up our guard position. Luke Fortner, I mean, it's really sad that he's, like I said, he's just not playing well. We thought he was going to get bigger and stronger, and he kind of did, but it just seems like he hasn't taken like that next step from his rookie season. So we might give him a little bit further to keep trying to prove himself. Brandon Sheriff has just got to play better. I don't even know how else to put it. Like, there's not a guy behind Brandon Sheriff to just plug in. Cooper Hodges is a 6th round pick. We could plug in Shatley over Sheriff, but if we do that, I mean, is Shatley an upgrade over Sheriff? And what if we need to plug in Shatley for Fortner or something like that? Like, again, that's very confusing. And that's very disappointing because Sheriff should be a strong part of our line. And then you've got Anton Harrison, who's playing right tackle. And I think they're probably going to keep Anton Harrison playing right tackle and just let him work through the bumps. I mean, Steve Spagnuolo saw a rookie right tackle and said, yeah, Chris Jones, go eat. So it's not surprising. I mean, anybody would struggle in their second NFL game against a guy like that. I think just in the preseason, we had a lot of hype for Anton Harrison. And I think Press Taylor and Doug Peterson were seeing a lot of hype for that too. So now they really need to tailor the offense kind of away from Anton Harrison. Try to have Trevor rolling to his left, not to his right. Things like that to keep the pressure off of Anton Harrison as much. Because I think right now the scheme is built for Anton Harrison to just be a starting right tackle, not a rookie, if that makes sense. Because he looks so good in the preseason. It's like, oh, cool, we can break out plays that go to the right or to the left or all these things. But it's like, maybe slow it down, maybe take the pressure off of Harrison. And yeah, we'll be a little bit predictable if we're always rolling to the left, if that's where our strong guys are when Cam Robinson comes back and Walker Little comes back. But that's better than having your face blown up every single play, because now the defensive coordinator from the other team is going to have to decide, okay, do I want to put my best guys on the left side since they keep going to the left side, and my best defensive end who's terrorizing this rookie tackle is always behind the play because, again, if he rolls to the left, play is coming this way. Now he has to decide, do I want to put my best guys on the left side? So if he does that, now we can take the option to maybe roll to the right, because if Anton Harrison is facing maybe another rookie edge rusher or someone with not as much experience, that might be a matchup he can win. But right now, if we're treating like Anton Harrison like he's, a starter ready to go, defensive coordinators do not see him that same way. They see him as a weak link to exploit. And that's what they did all day with the Chiefs. And you can't roll every play to the left. It's a lot more complicated than that. But that's what I definitely think we need to do, and probably on through most of this season until Harrison gets his sea legs back, because that's the only way to fix the offensive line. And of course, right now, we really can't roll to the left very much until Cam Robinson gets back and we show up our left guard position, because that position is really weak right now too, because a guy will just come crashing through and beat Ben Bartch. So we've got a lot to work on the offensive line. It's like, other than that, I think our team is great, and I'm really surprised at how well our defense is. Because there's not really a lot of holes on this roster. However, offensive line now is looking like our interior three could be holes. Don't know for sure yet, but that's what it's kind of looking like. However, defensively, I thought we were going to be a lot worse on defense. I thought we played better against Patrick Mahomes than we did against Anthony Richardson. I think the defense deserves a lot of credit. Trey Herndon, I gave him a lot of grief because I didn't think he was going to be able to hold up as our nickel back. He's playing a fine job at nickel. I still think eventually someone else is going to take over. Maybe someone with a little more juice, like Antonio Johnson, to maybe make a few more plays. But Trey Herndon had some great pass breakups. I still think he kind of gets outrun on, like speed-wise. He still doesn't have it to keep up with those guys. But in the red zone, he's been playing really effectively. And that might be something we do. Put in Antonio Johnson, towards the middle of the field. But once we get down to the red zone, put in Trey Herndon because he doesn't have to run as fast because the field is condensed. So that's an option for us. I definitely think our defense is playing a lot better than I thought. I always loved Andre Cisco. I chose us to draft him. And Walker Little. Those were two guys I really liked. So when we drafted them, I was really happy. And in fact, it was funny because I thought we were going to draft them a round later. Like when I did our mock draft, I had us taking Trevor. I didn't have us taking Etienne in that draft, and I didn't have us taking Campbell. I had us taking Trevor. I think at the beginning of the second round, I think I had us taking. At the end of the first round, I can't even remember who I had us taking. But at the beginning of the second, I still can't remember. But I had us taking Pat Freiermuth, the tight end, for our second pick in the second round. And then I had us taking Walker Little in the third round because I thought he would drop due to his injuries. And then I had us taking Andre Cisco in the fourth round because, again, I thought he was going to drop really far due to his injuries. And turns out they both got picked way earlier than that. We picked them in the second round and the third round. So evidently, the way we saw the board, thought that they weren't going to fall as high. I was just impressed that they picked two of the guys who were on my list. And when you look back at that draft, that was a really good draft. Not only did we get our franchise quarterback in Trevor Lawrence, we got a starting running back who's one of the fastest in the league. And again, I didn't like the pick at the time because we already had James Robinson. But how many teams would which say they wish they had Travis Etienne right now. Tyson Campbell has become one of the best defensive backs, one of the best defensive players on our team. He allowed that touchdown against Sky Moore, so the consistency still could be there, but overall, he's completely turned over a reef since a rough rookie season. Walker Little, our best offensive lineman right now, he's our starter. And then you have Andre Cisco, who's starting to become his own star in the safety department. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 starters in your first 5 starters out of one draft. It's very impressive. So that 2021 draft has a lot of stars. It's better than a lot of people give it credit for. I'll say that. It's better than a lot of people probably give it credit for. So I'm impressed with what Trent Baalke did on that draft. So anyway, back to the Chiefs game. Yeah, it's sad because it's like we could have won that game. I don't know if it would have felt better if it was like a shootout and then just Mahomes won at the end of the shootout. But here it feels like both teams played sloppy football, and we were sloppier than the Chiefs were, and that's why we lost. That doesn't feel great, and I'm sure Doug is going to hammer that into everybody. Like, you didn't lose because you're the worst team. You lost because you didn't play like a good team. You know what I mean? Like, we have a good team, and like this game showed, we have the personnel, the talent, and the people to hang with the best of them. We just couldn't get it done in the crucial moments when it mattered. And like I said, give credit to the Chiefs defense. The Chiefs offense put the Chiefs defense in a lot of bad positions, same way our offense did to our defense. But their defense held up really, really well. And I'm sure Doug is not going to harp on the offensive line too much, but it's just, that's a game we definitely should have had and could have had. So we'll see how it goes, if we meet them again in the playoffs. If our offensive line issues are fixed by the time we get to the playoffs, I could definitely see us snatching them. Like with the Chiefs, again, they're an incredible team. You don't really see them getting much better, if that makes sense. They don't have a lot of rookies in key places. Most of their team still needs time to grow. Most of their team is kind of already set. The only place where their players could get better and like really grow is in their wide receivers, because they have a lot of young wide receivers. Sky Moore, Justin Watson, Kadarius Toney, who I guess is... So, like, if we meet them again in the playoffs, those guys could be better after working off the whole offseason. But for us, our right tackle, our rookie tight end, Trayvon Walker, some other guys that we have on defense and stuff, they could still get better. So, we could be a better team by the time we meet them in the playoffs. And honestly, watching this game, I felt like we were the better team. We just made some bad choices. Because we played like the better team. Rayshawn Jenkins was breaking up passes. That's what makes it more heartbreaking. Now, I'm not saying I would have seen a blowout, but almost would have preferred us to see us lose the game over a play being made that our guys just couldn't get around, or I don't know. It just felt like a very sloppy, mistake-filled game. So now we got to move on to week 3. Most people are seeing a win here for the Texans. I still do as well. Like I said, even with our loss to Kansas City, we're now 1-1. Would have been great to be 2-0, but at 1-1, we can still achieve what I still consider that we are. I don't know if we should be considered the favorites, but I still think we have a very good chance to make a run at the number 1 seed in the AFC and finish 13-4. We just need to take care of business against teams like Texans. And we can't play the Texans like we played the Colts. Because with the Texans, again, they have a lot of young players. Problem with that is those players are going to get better every single game they play. Nico Collins didn't start off that great this year. He just went over 100 yards. Tank Dell, I don't think he caught a pass in the opener with the Texans. He just caught like 5 or 6 yesterday. CJ Stroud, he went from throwing, I don't know if he had a single touchdown on the opener. I know he had an interception. He just crossed 350 yards, 2 touchdowns and no INTs, passer rating over 100. So we can't underestimate CJ Stroud and the rest of these guys. We can't play them like, oh, they're still young. It's like, we have to play them like, hey, they're getting better. You got to understand they are going to continue to get better, and we need to be on our P's and Q's. We need to be ready for that, because that's going to be hard to defend. I think everywhere across the board, a lot of our matchups we have good, I guess, a good advantage in. I would say our number one matchup to exploit would probably be Shaq Griffin when it comes to our wide receivers versus the Texans secondary, because the Texans have a good secondary. Actually, they um, both starting safeties were out for this past game, so they gave up a lot of points. But Jimmy Ward and Jalen Petrie make up a good tandem at safety. And then Derek Stingley has been playing a lot better at cornerback since his rookie year. And then they have Shaq Griffin playing the second cornerback position. Now, of course, we know Shaq Griffin very well. And so if Derek Stingley has to line up on Calvin Ridley, well, Zay Jones will probably be on Shaq Griffin. And if that's what's happening, then I'm tossing it to Zay Jones all day. All day. Because he's going to toast Shaq Griffin the way Griffin got torched by Alex Pierce last year. Alec Pierce last year, which kind of pretty much signified his end in Jacksonville. Because Shaq Griffin's great, but he's not a burner, and he won't be able to beat. He might be able to disrupt Zay Jones, but that's the matchup I think we'll win. So keying in on him, Christian Kirk will be really good in the slot too. They're probably going to play Shaq outside and use Desmond King to cover Christian Kirk. And Desmond King's actually a pretty good cover guy, so I don't anticipate a big game for him. I think Evan Ingram's going to have a big game. If Jimmy Ward is playing safety, he'll probably be closer matched up with Evan Ingram, so that might change things a little bit. But I still do think Evan Ingram will have a good game against the Texans linebackers, because that's definitely a mismatch. Jimmy Ward is probably the only guy who could really cover Evan Ingram. So if he's out, then Evan Ingram's also going to be able to have a big day. The main thing that we have to exploit, though, is the Texans' run defense, because it's not very good. The Texans still don't have a really good guy inside, and Will Anderson is still going to be, working through the kinks and everything and pass rushing. So, we won't be able to dictate where Will Anderson lines up. But right now, he's really their only threat to get to us. So running the ball, like I said, we can easily, and I don't think Will Anderson is that good of a run defender either. He's still learning. I don't even know if he has a sack on the year yet. So running the ball, we should be able to either go straight up the middle or, to the left side where Walker Little is still playing really well. I think Anton Harrison will do good working against Will Anderson. Should be an interesting matchup because, again, it looks like Anderson hasn't really found his sea legs yet, as they say for rookies. I know he won't be able to beat Walker Little. So more than likely, the Texans are going to put him on Anton Harrison, which means on Trevor's left side, he's going to have, which is his blind side, should have clear protection all day because Walker Little will hold up. From the interior, guys rushing on the interior, though, maybe, see, that's why I miss pivoting a little bit. That's why I miss us having James Robinson. And honestly, he's out there somewhere. I would consider going and signing him. And I wouldn't necessarily release Tank Bigsby or keep I don't know who you would drop off of your running backs. But James Robinson could pass protect. He could keep guys from coming in on the blitz. Now, maybe Tank Bigsby can as well, but he got beat a couple of times in pass protection. And that's why having a guy like James Robinson was so helpful. And so, I would have him because that's a guy that you want protecting against blitzing from the inside. Because if we get blitzed on our inside, our guys might not be able to hold up. But James Robinson made some really, really good blocks doing that. So they'll probably keep Brenton Strange closer to Trevor, maybe use him kind of as a sixth offensive lineman to pick up those blitzes. But, that's a skill position player you got to subtract from somewhere. So it's going to be an interesting matchup. I think line of scrimmage wise, I think we will still win overall because I think Phil Rauscher is going to get our line in check and be like, you better not disappoint me against the Texans. I think our receivers, like I said, they have an advantage there because even if Stingley is able to lock up Ridley, Ridley is a veteran, I think he's better than Stingley and he'll get open. And even if he doesn't, Zay Jones has a huge advantage against Shaq Griffin. And so even if they decide to use Stingley to erase Zay Jones, which they might, Calvin Ridley's going to go off because he's going to dust Shaq Griffin at every turn. Shaq Griffin is definitely their weak link in their secondary. And I say that, and I love Shaq Griffin. He was one of my favorite players, especially coming out of UCF. But those are the facts. He plays for the enemy now. Got to take advantage of it. When it comes to our defense, A lot of their receivers are very inexperienced. Their most experienced one is Robert Woods. And so for that one, I'm actually kind of not sure who I would put on him. I would maybe go with Darius Williams versus Robert Woods because Darius Williams also has that experience to kind of match his. And Tyson Campbell is a little more experienced than Nico Collins. And I think Tyson Campbell could erase Nico Collins. And Robert Woods isn't really much of a deep threat. He's more of like a check down threat. And so I think that's where Darius Williams excels a little bit more in, checking a guy first 5 line in the first 5 yards on the line of scrimmage. Darius Williams can disrupt him off of his routes, keep him from getting those checkdowns. And if we do that, that should be in our advantage outside. Again, whoever plays in the slot, which will probably be Trey Herndon, will have to deal with, what's his name? Tank Dell, because he's probably going to play in the slot a lot. And he's a rookie, so Trey Herndon has a little bit of an advantage there. I'd probably bring up our safeties, though, to make sure. Otherwise, Texans' offensive line is very beat up. There's some guys missing. I don't know if Laramie Tunsil will get to play. So Josh Allen, Roy Robertson Harris, Trayvon Walker, Foley Fatukasi, we better have a field day. I wish Devon Hamilton was back, but he's got to take care of what he needs to take care of. But with all those guys playing, they're going to have a field day because that offensive line is hurt. It's not going to be able to defend them well. And if we get lots of pressure on CJ Stroud, along with our coverage holding up in the back end, we'll be great. And even if he, is able to leak it out to Dameon Pierce on a blitz or something like that, like I said, Foley Fatukasi is still a not Foley Fatukasi. Foye Oluokun is still a heat-seeking missile. He is going to obliterate any guy that comes in his pass. Same with Rayshawn Jenkins. He can kind of bring the spy. So I would probably bring Devin Lloyd on a bunch of blitzes in this game if I was Mike Caldwell, just because Devin Lloyd's playing a little bit better, but he's still not playing at that defensive rookie of the month level that he was last year. And it seems like he's still getting confused by what needs to be done on the field. So maybe I would just send him as the blitzer and let Foye tackle a guy who's coming out in space during a screen or something like that. There's probably not going to be a lot of deep shots, so there won't be much for Andre Cisco to do because, again, I think we're going to get them locked up on the perimeter, and there's not going to be enough time. So with that, I think playing a lot of single high safety should work really well for us. We can keep Rayshawn Jenkins down below the box where he really excels, honestly, and keep Andre Cisco, who has the closing speed to keep up in case they do decide to take a deep shot. He can be the guy to defend against that. But like I said, I don't see their receivers really beating our receivers, our cornerbacks, as long as we line up the right guys. Now, we might choose to put Tyson Campbell on Robert Woods and Nico Collins on Darius Williams, which could work. Either way, I still think a lot of single high safety looks, having Rayshawn Jenkins play close to the box, watching the screen, bringing Devin Lloyd on a lot of blitzes will probably be the recipe for victory because our defensive line should beat up on that offensive line. If we get pressure on CJ Stroud, he will make a mistake. So that's kind of the rundown for the Jaguars, how I think it's going to go this week. Score prediction, I would like for the Jaguars to win by at least 10 points. I don't know if I have an exact number, maybe 30-20, I would prefer, really 28-17. That's my prediction, 28-17. I think we get back on track. Trevor throws some touchdowns, maybe gets himself, we had talked about Trevor being in the MVP race. If he has another game like against the Chiefs, he will not be talked about as an MVP for the rest of the season. But Josh Allen threw 3 interceptions in his opener and then threw 4 touchdowns in the next game. And now he's number 2 right behind Tua in the MVP race voting. Him, Tua, Patrick, and Jalen are all right there. So there's not really a clear cutout. And again, the goal is not necessarily for Trevor to win MVP. But, if he plays at an MVP level, that's only going to help us get better. And win the number 1 seed in the AFC. As far as fantasy football-wise goes, this was a very, very embarrassing. As far as fantasy football goes, this was a very, very embarrassing week to be one of King Wales' teams because we lost by... So as far as fantasy football goes, this was a very sad week to be one of my teams, as we all lost, and each loss was by like 20 points or more. Let's just say I drafted Austin Eckler and Alvin Kamara, and it was a bad week for them to be out. I think in one league, my running backs didn't score any points. And in another league, I also have Garrett Wilson in another league, and we just lost Aaron Rodgers. So, not looking so great for me. Some tips: if you haven't picked up Puka Nacua in one of your leagues, do it, because likely someone else already has. Incredible receiver for the Rams, is a really good pickup. I'd also recommend grabbing, I know I just talked about him, but Nico Collins. He's starting to have some good performances together. So I picked him up, trying to see if I'll be able to use him and get him in my lineup. As a lot of people know, Nick Chubb went down for the season, and the Browns just signed Kareem Hunt. So if you have a chance to pick up Kareem Hunt and Jerome Ford, see who kind of plays out. That might be good replacements if you had Chubb, or if you know someone in your league who had Chubb and you're able to pick those two guys up, you can offer him a trade to get one of his better players, because you know he's going to need them, because he's going to need a replacement. So now is a good time to try to buy on a person who's freaking out because they lost Chubb for the season. Same with J.K. Dobbins. When he got lost for the season last week, there might be some people out there who are kind of freaking out because they don't have anyone to turn to. Now might be a time to make a trade that more benefits you than it does them. As far as good matchups to take advantage of, the 49ers defense has been playing insane, as well as the Cowboys defense. I have them in two of my leagues, and I don't know who to play each week, because each week they could just dominate. Like 49ers versus the Giants, I mean, look what the Cowboys did to them. So, kind of want to play the 49ers, but at the same time, the Cowboys are playing. Let's see who the Cowboys are playing. The Cowboys are playing Arizona. So, kind of a tough decision there. But I'm probably going to go with the 49ers for tonight. Um, and yeah, so that's who to keep in mind for waiver wire pickups. There's really not. It's funny how in some leagues, like, some guys are like all over fantasy football and they know exactly who's doing what, who to pick up. And in other leagues, people aren't as attentive. So make your waiver claims, get them in as soon as possible, because chances are they won't be there. So yeah, we're picking a win for the Jaguars this week. Talked about some of the things that we could do with our offensive line to maybe fix it, get it shifted. If you're not panicking about the offensive line, you don't really have to panic, because it's not like we as the fans are the ones going out there and trying to lay guys out. However, there is reason to be concerned, and we as fans should keep that in mind. Don't want to just pretend like there's nothing wrong, because there is, and something needs to change for us to make any kind of noise this season. So I think that about wraps it up for me. Of course, it was always the Jags, and let's hear it for a Jags 3 win over the Texans. Take care, everybody. Have a good one.